Hi everyone, this is Mari Craig, and you're listening to the Small Steps to Wellness show, a podcast where we discuss how we can achieve more wellness in our lives one small step at a time. For the past 6 odd years, I've taken a special interest in nutrition and I've changed the diet of my family on its head. But as I've dived deeper into the world of nutrition, I have learned that health is so much more than just what we put on our plate. This is why on this podcast we will be talking nutrition, mental health, being in alignment, holistic health care, self care, raising children, and more. We will also be hearing stories of women's journeys to overcome trauma and what it has taught them on the way. When we share our stories, we realize we are not alone and that things can change for the better. I'm so glad to have you with me on this journey as I explore what health and wellness truly encompass. If you like what you're hearing, please consider rating the show with a 5-star rating and sharing it with your friends. It really makes a big difference. Now, on with today's show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Small Steps to Wellness show with me, your host, Mari Craig, where we discuss how we can achieve more wellness in our lives, one small step at a time. I have two guests with me today, and I'm just going to introduce them first quickly, and then I'm going to say a little bit about why I have these two guests on. So first, I've got Ben Winthrop with me. He's a nutritional therapist, and he recently completed an MSc in clinical nutrition. He is especially interested in how people relate to food in the broader context of society. He works as a tutor and a student, or like a student support at the Culinary Medicine College, which I'm a part of. Ben marks my papers. Ben also has a keen interest in movement, training in both breakdance and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Jiu-Jitsu, you should really check out his Instagram. It's so interesting to see. In September, he will start a second MSc in Occupational Therapy, and you can find him on Instagram at benhealth_, and I'll put that all in the show notes. And the second guest I have with me is Victoria Garbett, Vicky Garbett. She graduated in Budapest, she's from Hungary, as an economist specialist specializing in PR and international communication. But then she moved to the UK after falling in love with an Englishman. That happens to the best of us. She had a couple of admin jobs before starting a career in anti-money laundering. But she recently quit her corporate job, actually, following her heart and passion for food and nutrition. She has, for over 4 years now, had a side business, which is teaching people of all ages to cook. Because she was struggling with her health, she decided to study nutrition and take ownership of her own health. And that's why she started the Culinary Medicine Diploma. And now you understand how I know Vicky as well. And that really tied in nicely with her cookery class business. And she's recently qualified as a nutrition coach, and she is working on launching her service. And you'll find her on Instagram under Twiddle Food. She's Mrs. Twiddle. And I'll put that also in the show notes. And I'm really excited because both of my guests today are really knowledgeable, and they're really forthcoming with information and with help and lovely to talk to. But the reason why I wanted them both to come on today was because Ben, a while back, actually it's not that long ago, he posted and had an Instagram post 7 days ago, talking about Saint Agatha's breast buns. And obviously the picture caught my eyes. I'm breastfeeding at the moment, and there they were, all these ice buns with cherries on top. And I'm just going to read you this post. He writes, in nutrition, we often reduce foods down to calories and nutrients, forgetting to consider the social implications about why people eat. It could be true to say that an ice bun with a cherry on top affects blood sugar, hunger hormones, etc., but this doesn't really help us understand eating choices, in brackets, which after all is the most important thing in nutrition. These buns are eaten to celebrate the day Saint Agatha refused the sexual advances of a Roman prefect and consequently had her breasts torn off with shears. Clearly, the choice to eat this food goes far beyond calories and nutrients. And as a breastfeeding mum of a baby, this post really caught my eye. And I said, Ben, I'd love for you to come on the podcast and talk to me. And I wanted Vicky on as well because she has some really interesting insights into it. So welcome. I guess, Ben, first of all, have you ever tried one of these buns? They look very delicious.
I've never tried one of the buns, but I've definitely seen them, but never tried it.
No, they look really tasty, don't they? What's your interest there? Because you've had a few of these posts about sort of social eating and eating in a social context. What's your view on all of this? Because you did say, like, we tend to think about nutrients and calories, especially calories, but there's so much more to food than that.
Sure, I think when you're looking at how you can actually help somebody, you have to look at their eating choices in a social context. So that I think that the St. Agatha's breast buns is quite a shocking, a stark example that stays with you, that it really transcends just the food on the plate. And we have a very reductionistic view of nutrition sometimes when we're talking about it. We think, well, this micronutrient affects this disease condition or something like that. But really, that's not why somebody eats food. And the human relationship to food is way more complex than that. So it was really just to highlight that with quite a stark example.
Yeah, I think you're onto something because and Viki might agree with me on this as well, that you eat for different reasons, you cook for different reasons, and you cook different food for different reasons, because it depends on what you can cope with that day. If you are a busy person for whatever reason, I mean, between Viki and me, we got 5 kids and a couple of pets, I think, as well. And some days you can't think about what micronutrients and am I ensuring that my children have on their plate, right? And I guess the same goes for anyone else who kind of find themselves in a bit of a dilemma when it comes to time. What's your why do you cook different foods, Viki?
That's a good question. Well, I like to introduce my children to, many different kind of cuisines and different foods, and I want to educate them so they can choose for themselves. It's not just about, having treats, and I've written a blog post about it. I don't know if you've seen it. Something just really, really triggered me, that how people just say, oh, this is just a little treat, have this, have that, and categorizing food. And yeah, I think we just need to enjoy it and find a balance, and introduce, if you are a parent, introduce your children to as many different, flavors and spices that you can, just so they are aware, and yeah, they see through, different kind of pair of glasses. Really, it's not just a treat, it's not just sweet, it's the world. And we want to enjoy food. Like, I'm Hungarian, so food is really a focal point of any kind of family meeting. It's really, really similar to Italian families, because we get together, we eat home cooked food, and it might not be, mega healthy. It might be deep fried. And it's fine. It's just kind of finding the balance that, yes, you have it with some vegetables on the side, or next day you eat a healthier, more balanced dish. So yeah, I think
but it's a good point that you're pointing out, and I see Ben nodding as well in agreement, because we have now 3 nationalities here, really, with different cultural sort of backgrounds. And I guess it's important also, especially if you move abroad, I suppose, to carry with you some of those traditions and passing them on to your children, so they understand, this is where I come from. I mean, there must be an awful lot of poppy seeds in your house, right?
Yeah.
Yes, a few.
My mom just sent me a parcel, and I'd love to show you what was in it. I'd rather not. But she did send some millet balls, some flavored millet balls, which are like healthy snacks, and I can only get them in Hungary. Yeah.
But I think it's so important to have kind of a balance there. I mean, Ben, you have a keen interest in, like, what I can't remember what you called it. But I guess it's like sort of why we eat across the world. And I'm assuming with your sort of Brazilian, I find it so fascinating to watch it on Instagram, by the way. But with your background there, have you traveled a bit and seen different food cultures? And as you have a keen interest, I'm assuming the answer is yes.
Yes, I've traveled quite a bit to quite a few different places. One of the major things that inspired me was actually the Brazil's national dietary guidelines. Don't know if you've,
Yes.
but they're I think they're the best dietary guidelines in the world. They're far superior to a lot of other countries. And one of the key things that they say in that guideline is diet is more than the intake of nutrients. And there's a whole section within their guidelines about modes of eating and like social eating and the passing on of culinary skills and the sharing of food in the family, eating in a comfortable environment, a little bit like you were saying. So that was one of the major things that really inspired me to think bigger than just the nutrients.
And they also have a section, I think. And so the reason why I know about this is because in Norway now there's a big, so Norway where I'm from, there's a big discussion around new dietary guidelines. And a lot of the people that I guess I would personally look to for advice in Norway, they're the ones that go, look to Brazil. And then the people who kind of don't really want to take this on board, they go, well, what does that country down is, Latin America, what do they really know? But one of the things that I've understood that they look at in those guidelines is ultra processed foods. And it talks about avoiding or reducing that as much as possible. And I guess that will also, if you do that, that will ensure that you cook more from scratch and that you then meet all of those other kind of, not requirements, but the guidelines that you were just talking about, right? Because I would assume that when you've traveled, if you go to places where it's based a lot around traditional foods, that you won't see a lot of ultra processed foods, right?
No, but as it happens, the one of the major things about, say, the nutrition transition is that there's a movement from the traditional diet to more ultra processed foods as a country gets wealthier. So when you see traditional diets in Brazil that might revolve around like whole grains and beans and fruit and things like that, you see them more adopting the Western diet and people moving towards that. So I like to think that you try different cultural foods, but a lot of countries are still moving to that direction. But it might be that economically, that's something that has to happen to lift people out of poverty, which is quite an interesting thing, I find. But yeah, so there is still it kind of infiltrates the ultra processed food consumption, and there's a movement away from traditional diets. But it's really trying to get people back to that place, but still having enough food to eat to prevent poverty and sort of other diseases of malnourishment.
So then that's an interesting point you're saying that about malnourishment, because ultra processed foods are, I guess, almost per definition less nourishing than your whole foods, but
Yes.
potentially cheaper to buy.
Sure. And there's through this nutrition transition process, as a country gets wealthier, you see a shift from sort of the malnourishment associated with undereating, such as like marasmus, kwashiorkor, things like that, into a different type of malnourishment, which is associated with obesity and metabolic syndrome. And then you get countries that are kind of in the middle of that stage, like China. You get the double burden of malnourishment, or the dual burden, in which they have both in different areas. So it's really shifting from one area to another, but economically, that might have to happen before you can move on to the next stage of trying to eliminate chronic disease from the population. So, yeah.
Which country is there then? Because in Britain, I mean, how many people are going to get diabetes type 2 at the moment? I can't remember what the latest stats are, but we're not exactly tackling chronic illnesses, are we?
No, we're not. But
So I shouldn't laugh, but it's more like despair. Yeah.
I say, because I talk about the nutrition transition quite a bit, that was created by somebody called Barry Popkin. The actual final stage of that transition, stage 5, is to move from chronic disease into like increased awareness of how you get rid of these degenerative conditions, and then moving forward into a healthier lifestyle. So I'd say that we're maybe sort of verging towards that direction slightly, with more conversation about nutrition, but we're still very much entrenched in the ultra processed food stage yet. We haven't got out of that.
Do you know the percentage of ultra processed foods we eat in the UK? Because randomly, having lived there for a number of years, I only know that in Norway it tends to be 60% of the food we eat or buy is ultra processed foods, which is shocking. And I wonder if Britain is even higher.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the exact percentage.
But it's
I know that type 2 diabetes, that's one of the major burdens on the NHS financially. So I imagine it's quite high judging from that.
And then the thing that kind of, I just want to go back to you a little bit, Viki, because we know all of these things, and you know, you as a parent of young children, me as a parent of young children, we feel this pressure, I think, on a daily basis. We've had a conversation about this before, haven't we? Of your children coming home, having heard about the latest fads or the latest trend, and so and so has that and that in their lunchbox, and why can't I have it? And you know, prime drink being the latest example. Can I ever have that? And there's also the question and the finding a balance, which I guess going a little bit back to the breast buns, finding a balance. How do you deal with that as a parent with this in this ultra processed world, I suppose?
Well, if we talk about prime, my favorite topic, I think that's one of the best examples, because my daughters came home from school, I don't know, many days. I heard this story from them. Oh, so and so has this prime bottle and it's amazing and we need to go and get it. One day she was really anxious about attending an athletics competition because she said she needed prime to have energy. And then that statement made me really worried. And I thought, okay, why do you think that? And so we had a chat about it. I looked it up. I looked at what it contained, all the ingredients. I read about the story, and with my PR hat on, I kind of quickly saw through it. And I thought, well, this is a great business, but like, why can't they, kind of promote something that is really healthy? This is just an artificial crap, basically. And they're just creating a hype that is not healthy. So my solution was, I said to them that I promise that I'll buy a bottle so you can try it. So, it's not this sacred drink anymore. And this is the thing about it, isn't it? Like labeling stuff and having treats and having something that, oh, this is a naughty drink, or this is something I shouldn't have, or this is something that, oh, only those who are rich can afford to buy it, or the privileged. I wanted to kind of peel that off and say to them, look, this drink contains this and this. This is they were talking about how coconut water is one of the main ingredients. And I bought coconut water and I said, look, here, try it. They wouldn't try the coconut water, but they tried prime. It was a few months after prime came out that we could get a bottle. I didn't go out of my way. I refused to queue or hunt for it, it just seemed really surreal, the entire scenario. I just couldn't understand why. But anyway, they tried it and they didn't really like it. And it just went away. So I think they understood that it wasn't really great for them. They didn't really like it anyway. And I wasn't saying, no, you can't have it. I gave them the choice to taste it and try it. They could make their own decision. So I knew that I chose the harder way. And I spoke to my husband about it. I spoke to other, parents about it. And most of them did agree. But they still bought the bottle of prime and they still spent a lot of money. And then I just thought, why are you doing it? And I realized, yes, because it's the easier thing to do. But in a long run, it might be prime today, then it was air up, and there will be something else coming up. So how do I protect my children, or how do I educate them and make them aware so they can kind of see through this marketing and all the push, because we are getting so many prompts on the phone, so many adverts. And now my eldest one has a phone, so she can see adverts through YouTube Shorts, and it's just everywhere. And they basically said to me that, "Mummy, we actually prefer kombucha that you buy," which I was really, really grateful to hear. And I do make my own water kefir. I do lots of fermenting at home, and they seem to like it. They try it. And I always tell them, this is here, this is why it's good for you, and make your own decision. You can try it and see if you like it. And yeah, I think it's just going to be a difficult ride, really, because my kids are not on social media. So what will happen when that comes into the picture as well? And so much you can do, isn't it? And as you said, Marianne, your post, in your post, you mentioned as well that it's not just you, the kids. By the time you pick the children up, they would have had a bit of a piece of chocolate, a biscuit, or someone's birthday, or another child gives them a snack, or another parent turns up with an ice lolly. And then before they come home, they've already had 3 times as much sugar as they should have had. And no wonder why, they are overstimulated. They won't eat their dinner. Why they are hyperactive. I see that on my kids. When Annabelle had a Diet Coke, I think it was either Diet Coke or a cherry. It was a zero Coke. She had headache, and she doesn't have it often, but I think maybe we went on a barbecue or something like that. So 2 days in a row, she had a pop and she had headaches. And she said to me, "Mummy, I think it's the Coke that gave me the headache." And we tried it again yesterday or 2 days ago, and she had a headache again. So
clever girl for linking that. I think it's some of the things you're saying are also linked to what Ben was saying about we are in this process of hopefully our children will be the ones kind of understanding this whole this was the stage 5 or the transition. Is that what you said, Ben? Yeah, exactly. I mean, I hear what you're saying. I haven't said this out loud really to many people, but now everyone's going to hear it. But talking about having middle-class children, I took my children to McDonald's because I didn't want it to be a big deal. So I queued up, and I think I got something like chicken nuggets and just like a normal cheeseburger or something. And none of them liked it. And my eldest, who had the burger, she's like, "Well, Five Guys is much better because there I can have mushroom on top, I can have avocado, and I can have all these things on top." And my youngest, she didn't like the nuggets, and I mean, I can't blame her. I thought they were pretty disgusting. But then I overheard my youngest saying to my eldest the other day in the car as we drove past, because it's on the motorway, she's like, "Oh, it's so good, isn't it, that we don't like McDonald's because it's so bad for you." I thought, I've created monsters. But at the same time, it's not something that is like you can never have this. It's just you can try it, but also there are so many better alternatives out there. How about that? And it kind of is the same with the kombucha and the kefir, isn't it? I mean, my eldest likes the homemade kefir that I haven't got it at the moment. I killed them all off with a new water filter.
I can send you some.
Yes, please. Yes, please. But it's about kind of educating them, isn't it? What's your take on all of this, Ben? With kind of what can we do to move to this, I guess, stage 5? Because I don't think honestly that banishing things from our view and stuff is going to solve everything. We need education, right? So how do we go about it? Because schools are overwhelmed as it is. So how do we go about it whilst at the same time not forgetting the breast buns and the social eating?
Yeah, it's a hard question. I don't know if I have the answer to that, but yeah, I think just awareness of just what's happening, really. That we talked about fast food and things like that. I've talked sometimes about how those places sort of geared the marketing towards children, with the music and the bright colours, and sometimes they have on-site play areas and drawing facilities, and the food tastes really good. Even some of the logos, it's like, I'm loving it, or a happy meal, like these are the sort of words being used. So it's sort of awareness that this is being geared towards children, I think, can help. There's things that there's a lot of discussion at like a public health level about stopping fast food advertisement towards children, taxing sugary drinks that went on. So there's things like that they sort of feel less in control of the individual with the family, I think. But yeah, there's a few ideas. I'd say awareness is one of the most important things.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I don't think as an individual you can do certain things, but also but because you're bombarded left, right, and center. If you just look at things like cereal aisle in the shops, I mean, it's not meant for parents, is it? It's meant for children. All the sugary things are meant for children. And often we've been given this responsibility, I guess, as individuals to sort it out ourselves. And the people produce all of this stuff, they can basically do whatever they like without any consequences. It feels anyway. Same, I guess, goes with a little bit of, I don't know if any of you read the book Stolen Focus by Johan Hari, talking about how social media basically gets us completely addicted. And then we're being told, well, turn your notifications off, as if the onus is completely on us as individuals to sort it out ourselves, right? I wonder also, I mean, both of you are nutrition coaches, how you feel about the level of nutritional knowledge that you get, for example, in general, if you go to the doctor for any health issues. What are your thoughts, Ben?
Well, I've never been to the doctor and asked for nutrition advice, so I couldn't really say about that. I would say that the consultations I've had with the doctor have all been very short. So I think that there's maybe a flaw in the system that really the client practitioner relationship needs to flourish a little bit more, to start addressing other aspects of lifestyle. But no, never been there. I would also say that in schools, there's much more scope for nutrition education and school dinners and things like that. I know in Japan, they have people teaching nutrition in schools and things like that. So I think that that's an area that could really be expanded upon and invested in for children.
Yeah, I agree. I see Vicky almost like, oh.
Well,
gloves off, Vicky.
Yeah, I have plenty of stories. Well, becoming a mom, obviously, having little children who suffer from tonsillitis and ear infection, many times, while they were tiny, they were given antibiotics. And I remember every single time they were given antibiotics, I asked the doctors, do you recommend me giving them probiotics, or is there anything I could do to complement this, to speed up the process? And the reason I asked this because I grew up in Hungary. So whenever I had to take antibiotics, the doctors told me, go and get some probiotics or get some yogurts, or told me that, there are certain things you should also do, or have a herbal tea, use some, other things that are, complementary to speed up the process. And also, I think it taught me that I can be in charge of my own health and I can do something. I shouldn't just rely on the medicine. So maybe it was more like a placebo effect or some kind of an education. I don't know which, but coming here, moving to England, which is a more developed country, I was really, really surprised that they laughed at me. They laughed every single time. They told me that there isn't enough evidence to suggest that probiotics or anything else can help, and you just need to take the antibiotics and get on with it. And that was really surprising. And another thing was vitamin D as well. that I was told in Hungary to do vitamin D drops to my children when they were little. And that wasn't the guidance here, and that came in later. So that was really, really surprising. And it kind of made me feel like, oh, is this something witchy or something weird I shouldn't be doing, or really old-fashioned that only like undeveloped countries still do. And that was one of the things. And the reason I started nutrition as well, why I signed up for the Culinary Medicine College, was due to having health issues. And I was told I had IBS, and I was given a medicine. They just gave me a prescription. I remember the doctor printing out I think it was the FODMAP diet, but it was like really badly printed, half cut off. I could barely read what it was. She just told me to look at those items and don't eat them. And I was just really surprised. I said, look, how long do I need to take these medicines? Because at the time I was like 32. And she said, oh, well, forever. You might be taking these forever if they work. And that really shocked me, really scared me. And I felt really helpless and ill. I felt like they put a label on me and just wanted to get rid of me, and didn't provide any help or anything else that I could be doing. They just literally said, no, take the medicine and you'll be fine. As it happens, the medicine made me feel even worse. And I got to the point where I just thought, you know what, no one is helping me. I'm going to learn this, and I'm going to teach myself how to help myself. And also, I realized that I needed to connect with my own body. And because, we all have busy lives. I had 2 young children. I lost my father-in-law in cancer at that time, really, really suddenly. There was a lot of things going on, and I just refused to kind of take the medicine and numb, because I didn't just want to, close my eyes to something that could be helped with lifestyle stuff. And I started self-development. I started learning a lot about health and well-being. And I realized that there was so much more you could do to help yourself. And I don't have to take medication anymore, and I can manage it. So and I don't even think it's IBS, or I'm not even sure that it is as simple as they labeled it, because I feel like as soon as you have a problem with your digestive system, you just get the IBS label and then off you go. And they didn't even tell me that it could have been due to bacterial infection or, something else that can go away. They didn't even tell me that. They just said, look, take the medicine. And it really, really upset me and shocked me. But I'm actually grateful, because this is why I'm on this journey, and I'm able to help other people to help themselves.
I haven't met a single person who is working within the field of nutrition that hasn't gotten into the field. Hang on, let's see if I get my grammar correct here. Basically, everyone I've met so far that is doing something to do with nutrition comes from a personal, there's a personal reason why they've done it. And it is because they want to help other people, because of however it's made them feel. I had Nicola Packman on a couple of weeks ago, who you both know, the Wellness Kitchen, sharing her MS story. I mean, what an inspiration, and coming again from a personal background. It is so interesting what you're saying about taking agency, having agency, taking control of your own life. Now, I know that a lot of people will basically go, well, I have to just eat super healthy all the time. I have to just have all of these right foods all the time. Otherwise, it's all completely wasted. And then we have, and I've certainly been there, where I started on this health journey, and I thought, God, I can't I can't have this one piece of cake because it's got white flour or whatever. But then there is, I want to go a little bit back to the buns, because we talk about, we all three of us talk about, this is what you can eat for, to support your body with this, and this is what you can eat to support your body with that. But I was just saying to Ben before we started this recording that I just came back from a pizza place and I had a salad and I had a glass of red wine, and I'm not sure I should be promoting having a glass of red wine, but I was in the good company of friends. I had a moment to just sit and relax for an hour. All the kids were taken care of. I could have a half decent conversation over all the noise, and that is what I would call social health. And that, I'd like your take on this, Ben, because surely eating all the right foods all the time and moving exactly the same, doing all the steps you should do all the time, but depriving yourself of the social health aspect, surely that is not health either.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the glass of red wine, though, because one of the things we know is that low to moderate but frequent consumption of red wine can reduce your risk of heart disease. What I find interesting about that is they often talk about the resveratrol and the polyphenols within the grape skin maybe delivering an effect. But I also think that maybe the cultural aspect of having a low to moderate consumption of red wine, when you drink alcohol, it's often with people, it's often with families, and you're not binge drinking, you're just sharing this alcohol together. But maybe that actually has this stress reducing effect and can reduce your risk of heart disease and things like that. So it's interesting that you mentioned about promoting red wine or not, but yeah. I'd agree. It's quite a difficult balance. I think that when you first get into nutrition, at least definitely with me, you can be very, very strict, and then you kind of loosen your grip a little bit as you sort of thing where there's more to life than just the food you eat as well, even though it's such an integral part.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's because you know so much. You get to a point where you know so much about food. You also know, like, if I eat this, then I'll have I don't know, glucose spike or what have you. And I know that's not going to be good for me. So it's about, I guess, putting your another hat on that's got a bit more wisdom to it, I suppose, and understand, okay, but this is a one-off. This is not an everyday occurrence that I'm doing this. And the one thing that I've learned, which I'm hoping that you'd agree with me on, and maybe that will be good for others to hear, is that, if you're going to have the cake and then feel bad about it after, not only have you had all the sort of unhealthy stuff that is a cake, but then you're having all the bad feelings about it after, you making yourself feel bad for having had the cake. So my take on it is, if you're going to have the cake or the red wine or what have you, have it and enjoy every single piece of it for what it is. And then, no, I'm not doing this every day. Right?
Yeah, I agree. I'd also say that sometimes we create an arbitrary distinction between mental health and physical health, as though the mental health doesn't impact the physical body. So if you're enjoying a meal and you're doing this frequently and it's reducing your stress levels, as we say with IBS, we know that chronically elevated stress levels, activation of the sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight response, that has negative impact on IBS. So that's a case in which your mental health is impacting the physicality of your body and disease progression. So introducing food to improve your mental health and being social could actually help you reduce some forms of diseases too. So I'd add that.
I guess regardless of what you then even eat, to a certain extent, because it's the aspect of the social element of it, right?
Sure. And then it'd just be about getting that balance about, because there's obviously too unhealthy, but then there's too strict. So
yeah. So how do we do this then, Vicky? How do we I guess teach our children and teach ourselves about bad balance, living healthily and the whole social aspect of eating in a world, in a society, in a country that has got such an incredible amount of ultra processed food readily available for us, highly marketed at children. How on earth do we do it?
It depends.
No.
Yeah. I don't think there's a good or bad way of doing it. I would say whatever works best for your family and for your children. My eldest one, she's 11 and a half. She is still a picky eater, but she is getting a lot better. And my way of doing it is, or what kind of worked, is involving them in everything. So when I go shopping, if I cannot take them, when I write a meal plan, I ask them, comment, what would you like to eat? I have plenty of cookery books, and then I make them read it sometimes, or just browse the recipes and see if anything in there that they like, they would try. And I add it to the meal plan. I get the ingredients. We go fruit picking. I have some fruit in my garden as well. I picked the first red currants today, which is quite exciting. And yeah, getting them involved. They cook with me when they can, bake with me. Yes, we make cake, we make, flapjack, we make brownies, whatever. But as you said, we make it together. We know what we put in it. And we also know that if it's a cake, that we're not going to stuff our face with the entire cake, at once, but we will enjoy it. So I think educating them, involving them in everything you can, so they know where food comes from. I know, I've been to schools and I did bread baking classes, and I teach children as well how to make pasta. And a lot of them don't know where certain food come from, which is kind of terrifying in a way. So I think education is definitely one, and schools need to do more, definitely. And I'm not trying to point fingers, and there's so much they can do. But I know that in Sheffield, for example, there's a lady who is a real advocate for nutrition, and introducing all that to schools. And I have tried to kind of link her with my school, and they were, not that they were not interested, they just, I don't know if they were just unable to kind of implement it the way that children would understand it. And if they hear me talking about this, I'm sorry, but that is my opinion. I've tried my best. I even, made healthy snacks from this cookery book that we put together, and I sold it at the school fair to introduce the children to, like a healthier option. I did sell, sweet stuff like a lemon drizzle cake as well, but I also made some healthier muffins and popcorn and all sorts of other bits and bobs. But it's just not enough. I feel like it's not enough that I'm trying my best, as you say as well, Nori, that then other people, they go for a sleepover and they eat a bag of Haribo and they're surprised that they feel rubbish next day. So what do you think?
Oh, it's a tricky one, because you don't want to be the extreme parent. You don't want to give your children a warped idea of what food is, and kind of be the meanie that always says no. So it's a tricky one. I think my children are approximately the same age as yours, tiny bit younger. But it is a tricky one. But I remember, I mean, it made me laugh, but it's also my youngest came home. She'd been to the pub with a friend. That sounds really strange. She's 7. But I said, how was it? She said, I had pizza and chips, no veggies. She thought that was hilarious. And because she knows how much I value, veggies, and she knows that I would not have allowed her to have pizza and chips. But I also laugh because she's just defying me for her, a bit as a laugh, really. And I think she knows that their vegetables are good for her. I think we can only do so much as parents, but perhaps we also shouldn't underestimate the power that we have. I mean, I grew up in a relatively healthy family. I mean, I've still had to learn a few things, but my parents always cooked. And I think even if they might have not cooked exactly what I would now call healthy all the time, I know it wasn't bad actually, but I think I have this idea in my head ingrained from them that you cook your dinners, you don't just go and buy them ready-made. And I don't want to diss anyone who does that, because I also had a ready-made pasta sauce the other day, because my God, having 3 children and a dog, it's just, I'm on the verge of a breakdown most days at the moment. So there is a time and place for all of these things, because as Ben was just saying, there's a mental health aspect here as well. And sometimes that does mean making the simple choices, right? So I don't have an answer, other than I would also like to go into schools and talk about the importance of all of this. But I do think parents as well have a huge responsibility. And if parents are making it clear to their children, well, I don't like those and those vegetables, so I don't eat, or they themselves drink all of the diet drinks and all the rest of it, then I'm not sure. I mean, we are the role models, right? And whether or not you have children, young people will look to you as an adult to see what are they doing. And if you've got any kind of if you are a kind of role model to them, then they will do what you do, right? So I don't have an answer, not one clear cut one anyway. What do you reckon, Ben?
Well, I don't have children, so I'm somewhat hesitant to talk about it, because maybe
You're
I
still a
don't
role model to some, I'm sure.
don't fully understand it. But yeah, the things that come to me is as you say, like the role modeling and sort of the importance of the family and the family eating environment. You know, like having family meals together could be very, very important, not just for, say, the mental health of adolescents and things like that, but you're not eating in front of the TV, you're not distracted, you're coming together to communicate and share food. But yeah, the role modeling. And I think sometimes, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't want to have the sort of disciplinary aspect of it. You just sort of want to model the behavior as something that's like enjoyable, and this is what we do, and we get them involved. So then maybe they don't rebel as much. They don't think of it as a punishment. They think of it as something that's fun and enjoyable.
Easier said than done sometimes. I've got a picky eater too. We've had this conversation, Vicky and I, about how on earth do I get my child to eat these veggies?
Yeah.
And it is hard, and we're also only human, and sometimes we fail. But yeah, you're onto it though. You're quite right with what you're saying.
Yeah, I'd say you say about eating the pie and chips, the pizza and the chips. There's probably worse rebellions for a child to have as well, other than that. So maybe that's something to be grateful for.
Yeah. And also the understanding, I guess, that she knew that was a one-off and she was going to enjoy it to the max because mommy wasn't there and she was out with her friend, and and she had a great time. So and maybe that's also social health again. She got to go out with her friend and and share a meal. That this is one of the things. And I've lived in this country now for 15 years, and this is one of the things that struck me when I moved here, was that very often families don't eat together for dinner. And we had a different work-life balance when I grew up in Norway, and I think it's pretty similar now as well, where you come home from work at about 5 o'clock, and then the whole family can have dinner together. And so the fact that you would cook one meal for the kids and then one meal for you later on, first of all, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to cook 2 dinners every day, thank you very much. But also the fact that you don't sit together and eat is very odd. Now, so my other half, sometimes he comes back late, and then I will often have eaten already with the girls. Or I do like a half and half. I eat a little bit with them and then I eat a little bit with him, because I think it's important to sit down. And even our youngest, who is 10 months old, he's he's eating food now, and we sit together and eat. And if he eats and I'm not quite ready for lunch, I'll still sit down and have something, and I kind of show and try to model to him, this is what we do. And obviously he will stuff his face with anything. He has not gotten to the age of 2 where everything can potentially be poisonous and we must avoid vegetables at all costs. We're not quite there yet. So but it's, yeah, you're right, sitting down together and sharing the meal. And then you can talk about, this is which one is your favorite, or which vegetables do you like the best, and also just not sitting there just focusing just on standing in front of your child, watching them eat. You're not eating and just going eat, but it can be like you having a conversation, and how was your day, and you talk about this, and then you just automatically kind of eat a bit what's on your plate as well. And then you can, by the way, how do you like that sauce that I just made? So maybe trying to get back to eating more together can be a really, really good way of getting, I don't know, health back a little bit, although that requires people to get back from work before 7 p.m. So,
Do you think that maybe the fact that people aren't eating together and aren't sharing food and nutrition together, that in that sense, the nutrition and the disease that comes from it, that's just a symptom of the disconnect that we have in society with social media and things like that?
Yeah.
And from our bodies.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about mindful eating? Because it just sounds like a big word, but in a sense, it's really simple, isn't it? Just how you should be eating, sitting down, enjoying the taste of the food, and digesting what you're eating.
Sure. There's a tradition, I forgot the word, is it fika?
Yeah.
Yeah, Swedish, yeah.
Yeah, where you'd have the coffee and stuff like that, and you'd take the time out. There's something quite mindful about that too. But then also, I feel sometimes part of the aspect of eating socially is that you just sort of get lost in it. That it's not mindful. That it's just you're sort of with other people. But maybe the mindful eating could be really good when you're eating in isolation or by yourself, and then you can really sort of take it slow and pace yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also just take your time with it. So I find often, even if we're sat around the table as a family, and I think we are so. I was reading somewhere, I think this was again in the Stolen Focus book, that we are walking faster now than we did only a few years ago, and I think the same can probably be said for eating. We feel like we have to be somewhere now. So we have to. So we're rushing things. And, for IBS, for example, that's not exactly ideal either. So I feel like we've gone, I wouldn't say full circle here, but we've done a few spirals around sort of on this topic on sort of eating healthily, but also allowing for the social occasions and eating not for the sake of having nutrients, but for the sake of celebrating something. We have a lot of challenges, I think, as a nation or as a Western society when it comes to nutrition. But I think maybe you're right, Ben. Maybe it's a disconnect. Maybe that's where it begins and ends. I don't know. Should we leave it as an open question, and maybe whoever is listening can give us their input?
Yeah, I don't know either.
No, it's an interesting observation, isn't it? Maybe we're so rushing to get from place to place and be more and produce more and be seen to do more and perform better, that we actually have lost this whole connection with why we eat to begin with.
Yeah.
Just a thought. What have I forgotten, Vicky? Anything? Actually, one thing that I did want to mention, because you did say this before we started recording, you run pasta making workshops, and you were just saying that's not healthy.
Yeah. Yes, sometimes people say, oh, pasta is not healthy. And obviously, as a nutrition coach now, it kind of gives me a bit of a challenge to to explain, but it's not necessarily that black and white, is it? We make it from scratch, and I do actually use spirulina powder, beetroot powder, turmeric, paprika to color the dough to make it more healthy and, you know, more nutritious. It's kind of a long story, but this is why I started running these pasta making sessions, was due to having a fussy eater and involving her in everything, you know, I could think of. So we bought a pasta making machine and started making pasta from scratch, and she enjoyed it that much. She was 4 years old that she started inviting her friends around, and I caught myself teaching people how to make fresh pasta every other week, and just seeing children and families enjoy it, and, you know, having that social aspect and making something pretty simple, really, or you think it's really complicated, but it's really eggs and flour and whatever you want to add to it. It was just really great, and it is, you know, it's fresh ingredients, so it's not, you can make it as healthy or as unhealthy as you want to make it.
And think of the benefits to your child who's been introduced to new foods. There's a lot of health in that. And I think, I guess to finish on that note, back to pasta, Italian, back to Saint Agatha of Sicily's breast buns. Health is so much more than just the micronutrients and the macronutrients and the calories in a food, right? They are important. And we will not be sat here, you know, having people tell us that we're all for ultra processed foods, but we're for a balance, everything in moderation, I guess, and understanding that health is so much more than just what we put into our bodies. Does that sum it up pretty okay?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Happy with that. Happy with that. Now, see, now I fancy one of those cakes. I've just been looking at this Instagram post the whole time we've been recording, and I keep looking at it, and they do look pretty delicious. So, but then, you know, as a final note on that, whereas before I probably have two and feel sick, now I also know that I will enjoy one of them, and I will enjoy every single bite slowly and mindfully, and then I will know that I've enjoyed it, and that's the end of it. Yeah. Thank you so much, you two, for sharing your perspectives on this. It's a big topic, and I think there's no right or wrong answer, but I certainly think we have a responsibility as whether or not you're a parent, but as grown-ups, to pass on the knowledge that we have, and to, I guess, inspire people to make small changes and to see health in a broader perspective, so that we can, I guess, leave the next generation slightly healthier than we are. Yeah. Thank you so much, you two.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You've been listening to the Small Steps to Wellness show with Mari Craig. I am passionate about helping mums get their energy back through simple nutritional changes, because we know that if mummy is happy, the family is happy. If you would like to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram under @smallstepstowellness, or visit my website, smallstepstowellness.info. Speak to you soon.